and you raced for Roush from that moment on until you retired.
Yep.
Or until you didn't never retire, until you quit racing in the Cup Series full time.
Yeah.
Did you ever get another offer from another team?
I got offers. Very thankful. I got offers all the time.
Yeah. What were some of the most compelling offers that you were like, golly, this is a good one?
Drive the 20 car for Gibbs.
What year or what?
That
what
was right before Logano went in it.
when Tony was leaving?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
gosh.
Were you in a position where you could have even really considered it, or were you?
I was.
You were scooped up.
I was, but I was on the run to win the title.
So you're having such a good year.
So I would have had to announce in my championship title run in my first time in Cup.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this guy gave me a chance, and I won a truck championship and an Xfinity title, and now I'm about to win the Cup title, and I'm going to sign with another team.
So let me ask you this. So obviously you're in a great car about to win a championship, so it's not you're probably like, the equipment's a lateral move.
Right.
All that's fine.
Yeah.
Was the money on the Gibbs side really, really good?
It was about the same.
Really?
It was about the same. Well, I negotiated a new deal,
Okay.
off of that.
Yeah.
So what I was making then, no.
The rumor in the garage for all these years with the Roush contracts were notoriously bad.
Well, I think that Carl got paid a fair amount of money. And in the days I raced and Jeff Smith was in charge, it was a fairly reasonable deal compared to I could have made a little bit more money going some other places.
Yeah.
But not a tremendous amount more.
What was the perks about racing at Roush? What were some of the things that were like, man, this is better. This is something other teams can't offer.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. Honestly, I should have left several times, 2 or 3 times. I think I should have. Because later on, we just didn't have the equipment. We just didn't have the equipment we needed. And I think I could have went somewhere else and won a lot of races and potentially a championship. But I was afraid. I was afraid to end my career, if you will. And I was just nervous about making that change. You know what it's like switching teams?
Yeah.
And I was just, I was nervous to do it. The other thing that was a big factor is I was really good friends with all of my sponsors all throughout my career. And so 3M was my sponsor, and I was good friends with the upper management. I'd go do retreats with them and do stuff, and I would have had to leave those people as well.
Yeah.
And so that was a lot of it was a determining factor. So it's a 3-way deal, right? Team owner, sponsor, driver. That was but especially in the later years, I felt like, when Carl left and then Matt left.
You were like, hey, I should have.
Yeah.
And so where could you have went?
I think the opportunities then were RCR and still potentially Gibbs, and I got offers from other places as well.
Yeah.
Ownership offer and Petty back when that one gentleman came in and bought part of it, and I was like, man, I don't know. They're offering to the world.
Yeah.
But I felt an affinity to Roush, and I felt like, when you feel like next week's going to be better, or next month, or next season, or
how did that go? How did that happen though? Because that's always been puzzling to me. Jack Roush to me is the epitome of. I mean, he's a racer. He's a racer, but also a very sharp businessman. If there's anybody that could build a race program that would just succeed, it would be him, and he did.
He did. Absolutely.
He did.
Built an empire.
Where did it go the wrong direction?
Technology.
How?
Technology. He let, or we let technology pass us by. And, Robbie Reiser is a great guy, very smart guy. But, Robbie tried to be, we were really late to having a competition director. Gibbs had one, RCR had one. We didn't have a competition director. And Jack prided himself in doing more with less. And we were way late putting Robbie in charge of competition director. And then we left Robbie in charge way too long and didn't provide more support. Like Robbie should have been in charge of the shop floor, right? He was super good at that. And, you know, we should have had other people layered up for technology. And we were just behind. You know, when it was the front bar and the driver and the crew chief, we were, you know, Jackson gave us everything we needed. We were unbeatable through some of those years, all 5 cars in the chase. And when all that started, I remember RCR has this 7-post rig and they got all this stuff and they run terrible. You know, they weren't winning races, you know, and we're sort of like got our chest stuck out. But eventually the table started to turn when they started figuring that out. You know how it was back when the engineer told you what sway bar you should run.
Yeah.
They were a laughing stock. They're like, no, that's not going to work.
Right.
Because it didn't work then.
Yeah.
And I think Jack got in his head that stuff doesn't work, even though he's kind of a engineering guy. Yeah. Anyway, that whole simulation and aerodynamically and whatnot, we just stalled out there.
Yeah.
And kept the same people and tried to do the same thing over and over and try and reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
And we were just stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
Did all of this predate, like when you say Roush peaked and started declining and getting behind on technology, did this predate the Fenway partnership? I mean, I'm trying to get my timeline right and kind of like remember how this whole Roush trajectory went.
Well, I think it was right around there that they came in right at when we were doing well, right? Before kind of all that technology and simulation and all that stuff took off.
Gotcha.
And aerodynamics, right? I think we got beat pretty bad on aerodynamics. We had a few opportunities to compare ourselves to like Penske. For instance, I'll never forget this. We blow the 2 car in the 16 car, and we're 90 pounds of downforce off.
Yeah.
So let me back up. When we merged with Petty, when Casey Kane drove over there, they had about 45 pounds more rear downforce than we did. 45, which doesn't sound like a lot.
I don't know.
We go test Phoenix, and they aero match the car in the tunnel. They put 45 on the back of my car. We go to Phoenix, and at 11 in the morning, they put on whatever made 45 pounds of downforce, and the car's 0.3 a lap faster. All the side grip in the world coming off the corner. I just lay in the throttle. It was like, there's no way you're going to beat this. It's impossible. They take it back off. We have 2 more days of testing left, a day and a half. I said, guys, we need to go home. There's no spring and shock. There's nothing in the toolbox that's going to fix this.
Yeah.
So fast forward a couple years later, 3 or 4 years later, 5 years later, we compare our car to the 2 car. They're 90 pounds of downforce better than us. Some on the front, some in the back, 90 total. We aero balance our car and create 30 horsepower of drag to get the same downforce as a 2 car. Now we're 30 horsepower drag worse than the 2. By matching the downforce, we go test Michigan. And at Michigan, same deal. We put the aero pieces on to match the 2 car. It was 3/4 of a second a lap faster with the aero map that the 2 car had. And you think the car's going to go, remember the argument, downforce will slow the car down, 30 horsepower drag. It was 3 miles an hour faster at the end of the straightaway and 5 miles an hour faster in the middle of the corner because you didn't have to slow the car down and then re-accelerate it. So we were off all through that, mostly aero. I say simulation and 7-post and all that. It was probably mostly aero.
Yeah.
Anytime we did that and we'd recognize it and we go, oh no, and we go home and work on it and we maybe found like 45 of the 90. Well, that only gets you halfway there, you know. So, and another trait that we had is in traffic we were really bad. When we get out front, we could take off, you know, because we could kind of overcome that aero part. But when we got back in traffic or we get a bad pit stop, we're done for the day. We can't get back up there.
Going back to Jack Roush, what is his response from a driver's perspective? And I'm assuming, you guys had, a bunch of teams and you have I'm assuming you guys talk. And so it's like, what is Jack Roush's response? And I asked this question by prefacing this. We've never really had good conversation about Jack Roush. It's almost like he's a mystery man till this day for us. And so you are sort of our only insight into what this would have been like and what Jack Roush is like. I'd love to have him on the show, as a matter of fact. But the fact is he's sort of a mystery. So what was Jack's response to this? Y'all were clearly off. Did he just say, we're not going to go invest in technology now, or we're not going to go invest in aero?
You have to, people win races. People win championships. It's about the people. And my thing is we were trying to reinvent ourselves with the same people and not even moving them around. And we needed to try something different to get out and get going. I almost had Chad Canals hired.
Really? Yeah. I mean, I believe that. Chad there was some moments when Chad was available.
I was trying to get him to come and save Roush Fenway in late 2014.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
2015, right in there.
Yeah.
I was trying to get him. I said, Chad, you can be the guy. Yeah. You can be the Ray Everham or the whoever. Set your own destiny, but you're the guy. Can you imagine if he came over there and Roush Fenway is rivaling Penske and Hendrick and Stuart Haas right now under his leadership? Yeah. And it would have happened.
I think you're right.
It would have happened.
Yeah.
And we were close, but it was probably, people just didn't want to hand over the baton yet.
One of the things that I find interesting about Roush that differs from most every other organization is how, and it may have started with Mark, is how Jack allowed the drivers to have, to not only have an opinion about direction, but also sort of shape and steer. Now, I know it was probably ultimately Jack's decision on what happened and what y'all did, but it felt like all these years watching you and Mark and other people in that organization, the drivers particularly, where in most organizations, man, like the drivers, we got opinions, obviously. We're going to voice them.
Sure.
But we're never really making the choices. We're never really offering up massive solutions or big shifts or big culture changes and whatnot. Whereas Jack kind of had y'all in the room all the time. When there was conversations going on or discussions, you guys were always at the table. Is that the reality of it?
It is, and it's unique that you have that view and recognize that, because I see it, I agree with it and disagree with it, because I'm not a management and a people person and all that. But Jack's view was, let's let the best people decide, right? The driver knows. The driver has an opinion. He feels like the driver knows what he needs to win. That driver really feels like, and he ran it as individual teams. Jack ran it as me, my crew chief, and our engineer. And we were kind of in charge of our own destiny. He would keep guardrails, right?
Yeah.
But you guys are in charge of, if you think you need a drop snout car or you think you need this front suspension or this. And he would challenge the 5 teams, right, to figure out what the best is. And then if Matt's winning with, this style of front suspension and this style of something, he'll be putting pressure on us. Why are you not, doing that? And he felt like if you have 4 or 5 cars figuring out what is the best, you'll end up out of 43.
Casting a bigger net, yeah.
You'll end up casting a bigger net and have unbeatable. One of those cars will be winning, and then the other 4 will be able to bring up the rear, so to speak. And so he believed in that structure, and that structure worked for a long time. Then when technology started taking over, we didn't really have, I don't feel like we had that management structure there like I talked about. Robbie was the only guy. Robbie's sitting in there, sort of, right? I mean, there were other people, but I feel like that we could have guided that ship a little bit better and shaped it.
If you like that conversation with Greg Biffle, listen to the entire interview. The Dale Jr. Download, it's available on all major podcast platforms.